Hey everybody, this is going to be kind of a less edited, less filtered video, but wanted to push this out to you guys. I will be making a more polished video around this, but I just wanted to show you here as my Patreon members, in case you want to start playing this, making a copy of my Lemonade model and playing with this yourself. I added a new tab, what I've called Cohort Model, and Jesus, I care. Do not disturb on. Okay, cohort model, and you'll find it here just under the main model, second tab. None of the other graphs are affected by this, but basically made a model around. Actually, I'll show you. Let's see here, and first of all, had made this quick model called a sort of unit economics, where I looked at, okay, hey, if we have call it the base cohort, which is all the existing customers, and then we have every cohort of customers for each quarter of time. And you can think about each of these quarters goes through time. You add another cohort, but each one of these cohorts, their premium starts to diminish over time, because sure, they have maybe premium per customer rises somewhat inside of them, but also they have their annual dollar retention. Some of those customers churn away more premium it turns away via customers than you're getting through rising premium per customer. So you get an annual dollar retention that's below 100%, and maybe it's 90%, like I've set it up here. And so over time, each cohort is going to decay away essentially, but you can stack each cohort on top of each other and put together a pretty nice model to look at, okay, what's the gross income that each cohort is making? For example, maybe next cohort, you look at what this next quarter, what the base cohort produced, plus what this next quarter's additional cohort would produce. I'm going to get tired of saying cohort by the end of this video, but you can produce that, and you go all the way down quarter by quarter, quarters into the future, and you can see how these numbers stack on top of each other, and the gross income grows as you continue to add new quarters. And this model is kind of simple though, because it only assumes like every new quarter is added exactly the same. So each one has the exact same characteristics, the exact same loss ratio, the exact same annual dollar retention, the exact same premium that's being added at the start of the quarter. So there's no variability within the quarters here. But then I built upon this, and find it here. Yes, here's what I'm looking for. This tab called the cohort model basically went, okay, I'm going to build a model like that, but a little more detailed, and I'll zoom out here so it's extra large, you get a big picture of it, and go back in time and build that model out for every cohort since 2018, or the start of it. So we have the start of 2018, and up here the start of 2018 Q1, and then we have that same idea, descending, decaying cohorts all the way, you'll see this spreads all the way down, and all the way down as you descend all the way down. You can see how all these quarters kind of decay over time, but also then stack up over time to a gross income that each quarter would produce as you're adding up the previous decayed quarters, for example. So anyways, I think you can get that idea. You can definitely look at this yourself under the model cohort tab. I will still be refining this further, but thought you should know you could play with it. And then up here I have IFP, so above the black line here at the start, at the very top, your IFP. I have cohorts IFP calculated, gross earned premium, and cohorts gross earned premium, and then your annual dollar retention on a quarterly basis, quarterly retention, I guess, and your life. This is actually, see, annual dollar retention quarterly. This is being applied. These metrics here, these inputs are going to be applied to the entire cohort's life. So you can modify them per cohort, but it's going to be the exact same descent. Now, I would kind of guess that maybe over time, your annual dollar retention, maybe it starts at, we have, 87%. Maybe that's the metric, that's what it was last quarter. But those customers in this quarter from Q1 2023, I'm going to guess that they have the worst sort of retention up front, and then that gets better with time. But that said, annual dollar retention is for the entire pool of customers, so it might be accurate because it's actually taking into account all the best customers from these previous quarters that maybe have less and less churn or very consistent, stable customers. They're just going to pay their homeowners insurance year after year. So anyways, that's a little bit of color there. And lifetime loss ratio, I'm calling it lifetime loss ratio, not just loss ratio, because this comes from Investor Day, where this slide was a really important slide for Investor Day. Basically said their predicted cohort lifetime loss ratio. Now, essentially saying that, and this does make sense to me, that for any cohort at the very start, you're going to have the worst loss ratio, and then as some of the worst customers either churn or you get rid of those customers, then over time the loss ratio should improve. So eventually you could have very, very profitable customers that are not churning, are very reliable, are low risk, pay their premiums year after year, and maybe never have a claim. And that's the really juicy, profitable part of a cohort that comes with longer and longer span of time. So in theory, your overall loss ratio should descend. Anyways, so that should sort of balance out to something you'd call a lifetime loss ratio, which is what they're predicting here. Was at as high as 86%, and now is about 61% in Q3 of last year. So I've put in, like right now, 61% all the way through. Just assume they don't get any better than that. 61% is the lifetime loss ratio, and then that applies to each quarter. Of course, I feel like in reality, it's probably a worse loss ratio for the first few quarters, and then gets better over time, and also probably slight worse annual dollar retention, and then annual dollar retention gets better. So we might be kind of front loading this a little bit with that assumption, but that's a little bit of nuance there on the on the lifetime loss ratio. And then I've built in a function where you can turn on the effect of synthetic agents. So if any of these quarters here, you want to hit yes, it's going to flip on synthetic agent math, at least for quarters going into the future. So, and also highlight some of the important cells. So what this does, so let's say the next 6 quarters, which is 18 months or so, which is kind of the plan for annual dollar retention. Say that they turn on synthetic agents for that span of time. Yeah, anyways, this flips, changing that to yes will flip the sort of turn on synthetic agents for that quarter. And also, you see down below, I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 quarters into the future, or roughly about 2 and a bit years, which I'm not going to go through the math here, but Demeen on Twitter calculated this was sort of the rough payback when you're getting 16% premiums, 16% of your premiums back to the synthetic agents, sort of the payback period they would need before they reach that 16% IRR. So that's what I'm going with, and that turns that on here where it changes the math, where you're receiving less premium. These actually are spiking up. So there's some inputs here around the synthetic agents. You can turn them yes on or off, yes or no, or just erase it. But then you can also say, if it's turned on, you can input your synthetic agents CAC spend per quarter. So right now the deal is for $150 million over 6 quarters, so I just have it at 25. You can increase this if you think they're maybe going to stack on more synthetic agents or do this again in the future. And and then you can also change. You don't need to change this one. That's a synthetic agents payback of in-force premium, but the synthetic agents percentage of sales and marketing. So if right now, if you say 80% of sales and marketing is being paid by synthetic agents, and then they get 16% premium for that, and they're paying $25 in CAC spend per quarter, then that's going to drive the amount of, I've called S&M variable that they're spending. So it really bumps this S&M variable up. I did it out as a fixed. I also calculated before in previous quarters that they're, and Demeen we're going to do a video showing some of these, the breakdown of some of these equations from Demeen here, but he proved, and I think his proof is right, is that approximately $1 of CAC spend, and I call it variable CAC spend, like ad campaign spend, turns into $3 of premium. So that's how I've calculated in previous quarters their sales and marketing variable, and then the difference is their sales and marketing fixed. So I have their fixed, and I have non-S&M operating costs, and then I have a growth rate for those costs, which I have growing at about 2%. So you can change those. If you change this to 5%, it's going to affect these two numbers as sort of a fixed baseline operating expenses, and hopefully we get a lot of operating leverage around. And then sales and marketing variable, I have being spent here or here in the past being a third of the premium that they're gaining. And and then in these future quarters, I have it if you're either, again, being a third of premium growing, and you can set the premium to grow however fast you think, or it's going to be if the synthetic agent's turned on, then it's going to use this math, and it's going to drive how much premium how much CAC advertising they're spending, and then how much premium they're getting. So yeah, I hope that explanation makes sense. You can make a copy of this and play around with it yourself. It's kind of fun to do that, but it's interesting. So if we zoom out and I turn off all of these quarters, so there's no synthetic agents at all, and you'll see we're getting to profitability kind of right at the start of 2028. And I mean, this is a rough model. Some of the rough things are I'm just literally punching in 2% a quarter, 2% a quarter, 2% a quarter of of SMN, sales and marketing fixed, and non-sales and marketing operating expenses. So that's sort of the growth rate there. Is that too high? Is that too low? Is left for a lot of debate and would change a lot of things. And also I've just input also the top line. I'm growing at a low growth rate of the next 2 years, which management said, and then I have that accelerating back up to 30-40% in the years following. And there's also no reinsurance factored into this, so some of the effects of that are not built into this, which would have a bit of an effect. But you can see we're still getting to profitability around the end of 2027, which is kind of what I've shown in my current model. I have profitability by 2027 there. It's more sort of typical model rather than modeling from these cohorts. But now let's play around with it a bit. If I go back to the present here, and let's just say 3, or let's just turn on the next 6 quarters of synthetic agents and say they spend 25 million at 80%, then suddenly you're shifting profitability closer to the start of 2027. So about a year sooner, you're suddenly shifting that forward. Now, what if they just keep doing the synthetic agents? What if they renew and they do it again, right? Let's say values only. It still makes it a little bit better, but you're starting to back in here. Otherwise, I was starting to wrap up the amount of premium you're gaining. basically saying they're going to spend on growth, more and more on growth. So what you might want to do then is you could increase, because these synthetic agents quarter, suddenly they're actually only spending $31 million in total CAC spend, including the synthetic agents effect. And you really, the next quarter we were actually at like $40 million. So you might want to reduce then the percentage that is covered by the synthetic agents. So if we adjust that, for example, so that there's, we say maybe it's like 60%, well, suddenly you're shifting profitability much sooner. So now you're talking like 2026, in that range. Of course, I didn't make this. Maybe I'll make this change. I'm not sure. I didn't make this variable rate, variable numbers for each quarter. That might be better if I input those, down here, so that you could even adjust each quarter. Maybe 80% is covered now, and then they cover 50% later, and then 25% later once they become profitable, to really keep putting fuel on the fire of growth. But it's really, I might still make that change, but it's a really interesting model to be able to play with that. Because even for example, let's just say, I'll delete those. Let's just look at the next 6 quarters to have synthetic agent effect. So again, now profitability is like we were at 80% before, and profitability was like the start of 2027. But if we drop it to 50%, where they're spending $25 million from the synthetic agents, but they're spending $25 million themselves, and they can convert $1 CAC to $3 of IFP. Well, now they're shifting profitability even like a year sooner. But let's say maybe we go back to 80, but let's just say they like load up on synthetic agents. Like they say, they have way more money, and they're going to actually spend, $100 a quarter and just pour fuel on the fire of synthetic agents. Well, now suddenly you're shifting profitability way sooner, up till 2025. You're becoming profitable. The synthetic agents, like in a sense, you're spending more money. You're converting less than you otherwise would have if for the same amount of CAC spend. But if you're increasing your overall CAC spend without keeping your operating expenses kind of similar, so you don't run into cash problems, then you're pulling profitability much closer, much sooner. Is kind of what the synthetic agent effect has. Maybe you're sacrificing some profitability later on, but as you get down to say like this quarter, 2025 Q2, and if you just kept stacking these synthetic agents, you're actually going to be hurting these values across here, but you're pulling so much of that forward into the present sooner, because you can drive more growth faster and sooner, that you reach profitability much sooner. So I think these synthetic agents are like a terrific idea, and you can play with some of these values yourself. And again, I might convert this so these equations in here actually are for each quarter, and you can set them. Sometimes annoying, you're playing with that, because then you have to modify a whole bunch of cells one by one to play with it. But yeah, it's pretty powerful. It's pretty cool to be able to look at this, and you really clearly see the effect of the synthetic agents over time. Or if you didn't have them, if they don't have them, I still think it's a good chance we reach profitability, unless this is actually one wrinkle. Unless this lifetime loss ratio is just out to lunch. Hopefully you guys can see this. I'm like zoomed way out. I have pretty good vision, so it's not a problem, but I know hopefully for you guys that are watching, this is fine. But like, say for example, what they showed here, this is wrong. Like these cohorts don't achieve this. They peter out well before they get these really profitable customers, and the loss ratio is actually 75% is the best they ever do. Okay, so I'm just gonna change everything to 75%. Like then it's pretty bad news, let's go to like 60%. Then it's pretty bad news, because you don't even, if there's no synthetic agents at all, and the best lifetime loss ratio we ever get is 75% across every cohort. I don't think that's accurate. I think more it's something like I think this graph is reasonable, but if not, like if in the more take this sort of bearish view, then we don't reach profitability or cash flow positive state till 2030, maybe at best, and we're way in the hole on our cash equivalents. It will have to have some huge raises between then and now. So it's really bad news. Now, what though if that's the case, say it's this bad, 75%, but say we turn on our synthetic agents, I'll just turn on for like, I don't know, let's just try till the end of 2027. They're all turned on, and let's say they stack them. Let's say like they cover 80%, but they actually get like 50 million. Well, now we're reaching, even in this state with 75% lifetime loss ratio, we're reaching profitability by 2029. Now, if we go to, let's say even more aggressive, let's say it's like $75 spend. Well, now you're still reaching profitability somewhere in like 2026. The synthetic agents die off here, so maybe I'll make them even longer. Like just keep them rolling all the way through. You're dropping some of your profitability off, because you're shifting. What could have been maybe potentially bigger profits down the road if there's no agents at all, you're shifting some of that profit into the now, and then that kind of drops off and you're having some negative effect. But in that case, they still could probably just stack up synthetic agents and probably become profitable and probably keep their balance sheet still healthy. If they're super aggressive with all this. Now, all this massive growth assumes they can keep converting $1 CAC into $3 of, I should actually say $3 there, and $3 of IFP. Oh, never mind, it's right here, $3 of IFP. I'll put a blank. Sorry about this. There we go. Another guy with $3 of IFP. All this assumes you can keep converting that, and maybe pessimistically you could say, well, you're going to tap out of markets and the low-hanging fruit's gone, so then you have worse conversion. I think the devil's advocate, the more positive view, would say, well, you can actually do better because you get more advanced in your advertising campaigns and more knowledgeable in who to target for insurance and when. And maybe you get better just general word of mouth, so you have more organic growth that's happening too, which could happen as well. So there's some debate either way whether this value could actually improve or get worse. But that is a major consideration. That we're just assuming that they'll just keep piling on the growth, doing CACs right here in these quarters with this much larger synthetic agent. They have 93 million in growth there, versus right now they're talking like 16 million in CAC spend. Anyways, I'm just gonna back this back to where it was. So I'm put those next 6 quarters on, so you guys can again find this and have a look. But it's still encouraging. If you just look at like the base, if say they did the 61% lifetime loss ratio, say the next quarters they're growing, the next 6 quarters they do this 25 million a quarter at 80% for 16% payback, then then you're still going to reach profitability like in probably 2026, early 2027, which if I flip to my other model, we're at, I'm very close to that, or was around there. So it could be potentially there. in that range. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for all your support. Let me know if you have questions here on this, and I'll try and get back to you. Otherwise, I will be doing a more polished video, basically explaining a lot of what I've explained here. But I thought be good to start to get you guys early access, and also hear if you had any feedback, and then also a chance for you to start playing with this and thinking about this. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Remember, it's in the bag.